Hey YouTube, today I am at Cuyahoga National Park. I think I'm spelling it correctly. So in today's video I thought I'll talk about why I left Canada about 12 years ago. I thought I'll talk about it because a lot of people ask me why I left Canada. People are often curious because from India or many other Asian countries, usually people are trying to move to Western countries like US, Canada, Europe, and places like that, and it's very rare that someone moves back to. It's very rare that someone moves back to their country of origin. And I thought this video would be useful to someone who is either considering moving to Canada for the first time, or for someone who is considering to maybe move back to India, after spending some time abroad. Let's get out of this place and check out some nature, and we'll continue talking. I found a quiet place where I can stand and talk for a bit. There's nobody around. So this is in Cleveland, Ohio. It's a very busy tourist spot. There's lots of visitors around in the main trail area because it's a weekend, and it's just so many people around. So I tried to find a quiet place to sit and chat. So coming back to the topic, why did I move out of Canada? I think that's the wrong actually that's a wrong topic, because the title should have been why did I move back to India rather than why did I move out of Canada. Because as a country, I loved living in Canada, and there was no reason that Canada wouldn't have been a good place to stay, but I had my own personal reasons why I wanted to move back to India. And so the title should have been why I moved back to India. The first thing was that I was working as a software engineer, and I always wanted to start my own business. I had a entrepreneurial mindset. I think I got that from my dad. He was always into business, and he always encouraged me to do my own thing. And that was there from childhood, that I wanted to kind of try and do my own thing at some point in my life. So I was, that point in my life, I was probably 32 or something. I was living in Canada. I spent some time there. I was working as a software engineer for several years. And I felt that it was time that I wanted to make a change and maybe even try getting into, try and do my own thing. Now in Canada, it's very difficult, especially if you are a single earning member of the house. You always need to have a full-time job. So security was an issue, right? So you need to constantly have a job to pay the bills. You had car bills, you had home bills, you got insurance, and all those kind of things. It added up. So it was difficult to kind of, if you had a small family, it was difficult to try and do your own thing. Now back in India, fortunately, my parents had some resources, and I could, if I moved back to India, I could leverage on those resources, right? I could, stay in a house, didn't have to pay mortgage. I had a car, didn't have to pay car bills, just had to pay for gas. Uh, the cost of living in India is much cheaper. So if I wanted to try and do something, start my own business, try some startup kind of thing, it would have been much easier for me. I had the leverage. I could go live there for a few years, try out something, and if it didn't work out, I still had the choice. If I wanted to move back to Canada, I could. So that was 12 years ago, and I moved to India. Thought I'll try it for a few years, give it my best shot. Unfortunately, it worked. So um, I'm settled there now. Now, by the way, I'm just in the U.S. for business trip. So if you look around, this is not India. I'm just here for a business trip, and I thought I'd take the opportunity on a weekend when I'm free to kind of talk about this. That's the first reason: leverage. So if you have resources somewhere, if you're fortunate to have a place to stay, a place to live, and not pay rent and mortgage, and if you wanted to start something on your own, I think you should go for it. That's one big thing I learned from the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. He talks about leverage. The other major thing was also my parents supported me 100%. They supported me moving back to India. They supported me trying my own thing, not having a job. So that was a huge plus for me to move back to India.
I went all day.
Oh, this is the
Now, the life in Canada, one major disadvantage is the weather. Um, at first, I used to love the winters, but I soon found out that I'm not a winter person. I love the tropics, I like the sunlight. This became more apparent as time passed. During winters, when I drive to work, there'll be snow all over the place. It will just look white and gray everywhere. Slowly started to kind of take a toll on my mind. It started kind of giving a little bit of a depression kind of a thing. I don't know if I was depressed, but uh, I had that kind of a hollow feeling that things needed to change. Maybe it was because of the lack of sunlight and maybe the lack of colors that I've used to. In India, everything is colorful and there's sunlight throughout the year. Maybe it's just that my native place would actually do more good to me, and I was in a place that um, it's like a fish out of water. Or maybe that's not a nice analogy. Fish out of water will die. I don't know what's a good example. Okay, forget it. The climate was a bit of a depressing thing for me. Plus, I was in a smaller town in Canada called Halifax. It's in the province of Nova Scotia. Just those moments, right? When you're in the grocery store, when you're driving to work, maybe it's becoming so monotonous. And you're doing the same thing every day, every week. And it was not giving any meaning to what you're doing. So I could maybe that kind of started working a few years earlier before I decided to move to India. And again, you would notice that none of these problems are actually problems of the country itself. It's just my personal issues, right? It would be completely different for someone else who might have a larger family in Canada, or who's maybe living in a bigger city like Toronto or Vancouver or something. Maybe you would have lots more community, and so on. Or if you are an extrovert, you like to go out and meet people and do a lot of things. The country offers a lot of those kind of options. Even in winter, some people like to go out in winter and do winter activities. I didn't do that. I'm a summer person. I like to go out in summer. I like to cycle or go out hiking. I used to do that in summertime, but winter is pretty long. You have like 6 to 7 months of really cold time in Canada, right? So yeah, it was, for me personally, it was kind of lonely and depressing. So that could have been one major issue that kind of triggered these kind of thoughts and feelings about moving back. The second main reason was that I would be close to my parents, and they were getting old. Um, um, my brother is in the US, and I was in Canada. We are two siblings, and my parents were alone. And I thought it was, it would be nice, A, for me to be closer to my parents, and B, for my kids to, spend time with their grandparents. Um, live in that, have those, live in India, and see what Indian life is about. Get those Indian values maybe. Now they have Canadian passports, so they can always move back to Canada if they choose to later. Um, so for me, being close to parents, and my kids were at the right age. Two sons were 3 and 6 at that point in time. It was just the right time that they can move without feeling any culture shock or anything. Now, if they got into their teens, it would have been difficult for me to move back, because they would have already got into, because they would have already been acclimatized to the Canadian culture, and it would have been difficult for them to move back to a completely new country. For them, India would have been a completely new country with completely new culture, and so on. So the time was right, both in terms of my kids, for me to be closer to my parents, and also in the early 2000s. Both India and China were seen as major economic powerhouses. There were a lot of talk about how the economy is getting very strong. You know, these both countries there's lots of opportunities there to be tapped into and things like that. So I thought, you know what, I moved out of India because there's lack of job opportunities and so on. Now I want to do something new. The economic climate in India looks like it's something that I can, give it a shot. It's favorable. It's in a favorable condition. So all in all, for me, the time was right to make that move. And it's been 12 years, and I don't regret it. If you are considering moving to Canada, and if you have the opportunity to do so, I think you should try it out. It's a great country. You might love it. You might, decide to stay here and raise a family here, or you might decide to go back. So just because it didn't work out for me, it doesn't mean that it's not going to work out for you. I still try and visit Canada as much as I can. I still have friends there. It's just that at that point in time, it was more appropriate for me to be in India. It was better for me, financially and also family-wise, for me to be in India with my parents, with my kids growing up near, with my grandparents. So that those are the big reasons for me. But in terms of the country itself, it's a great country, great outdoors, lots of nature, great people. If you're not bothered about making a lot of money, if you're not too much into making a lot of money and just want to be happy and peaceful life, it's a great place. You just need a job, and you can have a good standard of living. The healthcare is good. I'll make another video on what was my experience of living in Canada for the 8 years. I still remember it, a lot of things, very vividly. So very good memories. So I'll make another video of how it was living in Canada and post that in the future. If you're interested, let me know. If you're interested to hear about it, I'll certainly want to do that. If you have any questions at all, do let me know in the comments below, and I'm happy to give you any feedback or help or anything at all. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please do hit like and maybe even subscribe to my channel. I do a lot of travel based things. I like traveling, so I do travel based videos. If you like that, you can subscribe. If you manage to stay till the end of the video, wow, thank you. Bye.